We are live, and Dominic Thiem, the Austrian who many place in a generation that they call the lost generation, has proven today that the lost generation is not lost. I think that's one thing that happened today. I think that Federer did a valiant job here, folks, but I have been singing the praises of Dominic Thiem for a long time now. And today, it was Thiem's time. It was Thiem time today, folks. How are you doing? I want to hear your views on this match, my friends. I want to hear your views. It was, in the context of a best-of-3 match, it was a marathon. And it was hard to predict where this one was going to go, folks. Very hard to predict. Federer looked fantastic in the first set, almost unbeatable, defending so well, while meanwhile, Thiem, I think, had a hard time kind of getting up to speed, kicking it into gear. But once Thiem did kick it into gear, he brought what he always threatens to bring, but has failed to bring, notoriously, in a couple of very high-stakes occurrences, such as the 2018 French Open final. Well, I know the Fed fans are probably a little disappointed. I'm watching Federer give his speech right now. Listen, Federer did a great job today. I think if we had to boil it down, I want your views, by the way. I want your views on why this played out the way it did. But if we had to boil it down, I would say that it boils down to the capacity of the Austrian to attack, the attacking component of Thiem's game, and his ability to hit these accelerating ground strokes from fairly far back in the court. Now, Federer, unfortunately, was giving too many short balls to Thiem. When Thiem has the time to sort of wind up and prepare his shots, of course, Roger's speaking now. I should pause and listen to him. But when Thiem has time, when Thiem gets the time, well, it was Thiem's time today in a larger thematic way, but when Thiem has the time, when his opponent gives him the time to wind up and set up these walloping ground strokes off both wings, the backhand and the forehand, and his backhand looked fantastic today. Well, I've said it before. In fact, I said it a few hours ago. When Thiem is firing on all cylinders, he can give problems to any player on the tour. That includes Djokovic, it includes Nadal, and of course, after today, we've got proof that it includes Roger Federer. Thiem, for those of you tuning in, Dominic Thiem, a player that I've been singing the praises of for many months now. Many months. Thiem's in the money today. It's Thiem's time, and it's Thiem's money time today. I think he's taken out something of the order of $1.5 million from this event, this title, his first Masters 1000 title. Congratulations, Dominic. You deserve it. And you know what? You performed so well today. You performed up to your capacity. And what exactly is that capacity? Well, I want to talk a little bit about Thiem, but we're getting some comments now. They've got the ceremony that's ongoing at this point. Federer made his speech. Let me know what you guys think. I've gotten a couple of comments here. I want to know what your views are. I often talk too much and I give my views on things. I mean, I did watch the whole match. Ended up being about 6 or 7 pages of notes. And again, if I had to boil it down, it comes down to Federer's inability to defend against the onslaught that the Austrian brought, beginning in the second set, of course. In the first set, Thiem hadn't quite started his engine, as it were, but it got a lot better for him in the second set. There was a break, I believe it was in the 10th game, and Thiem took that set predicated on the one break. And then, of course, in the final set, the win was predicated on a late break. Maybe that was the 10th game break. It was in the third set, excuse me. So, and then to serve for the match at 6-5 in the third, Thiem went up 40-15 and was just committed to this with a laser-like focus on this title. I'm so happy for Dominic. It's not a total loss for Fed fans in the larger context of why we love Roger and why we love his style of tennis. Remember, Thiem is in many respects a torchbearer, folks. This was not a match where Federer went down to one of these walloping two-handers with the muscular approach to tennis, the weightlifting approach to tennis. That has its merits, of course. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying there's a place for the Federer style. And Thiem, while I don't think Thiem quite sort of exhibits the kind of variety and nuance and touch that Federer does, and I'm not sure he exhibits the kind of nuance and touch that even a Stefanos Tsitsipas does. But Thiem does bring that potential, and he's bringing a lot more nuance to his game. If you were to critique his game at all, it would be that it's just so much power. Again, he kind of brings that muscular approach that Nadal brings, but with the one-hander. It's amazing the kind of power he can generate off that one-hander. Well, again, I've said it before. I said it a few minutes ago. This comes down to Federer's inability to take time away from Thiem. Federer was hitting enough short balls, and of course it was hard not to. Thiem was attacking, attack, and he was doing it beginning in the second set and certainly in the third set. He was doing it impeccably with tremendous precision. And it was hard for Federer to defend. Let me say, Federer was defending well today. A lot better than I've seen him defend in the recent past. But Thiem was just too much. I don't think even Djokovic could defend against what Thiem was dealing out today. We've got a comment from B-Dog says we can't quite crown Thiem. Well, he's getting crowned over here in Indian Wells. You're right. We can't make any definitive conclusions about Dominic Thiem. He's been just too inconsistent in the past. But this was sort of coming to Thiem. I mean, and that he did it on the hard courts, that he beat Federer for the first time in his career on the hard courts. He's beaten Federer twice before. Now he has a winning record against the 20-time Grand Slam champion, the 27-time Masters 1000 champion. He has a winning record against the great Roger Federer. Roger Federer now smiling graciously as Dominic Thiem makes his comments in acceptance of this trophy and this well-deserved title. And again, we're congratulating Thiem. Listen, for the Fed fans out there, there's a lot to celebrate. That Federer had such a deep run at Indian Wells. Unfortunately, it's a repeat from last year, isn't it? Federer, of course, lost to Del Potro last year in the final, and he lost this year to Thiem in the Indian Wells final. That loss last year was a little more shocking and disappointing for the Federer fans because Federer was so close. Well, these matches are always so close. Federer could have won this. It was about a couple of shots, a couple of points. Is often what these matches come down to. But on the whole, I think Thiem well deserves this title because his attacking game was just devastating today, and the great Federer, who was defending swimmingly, did not have answers to all of the propositions, the accelerating propositions that Thiem was making and setting forth, putting forth today. I knew, and I stated before the match had begun, that Thiem has the toolbox, has the artillery, the arsenal to take down Federer in this final. He did. It's just a matter of whether he could sort of bring it out and whether Federer had the fortune that usually follows Federer. Well, both of the players had a bit of fortune in this tournament, didn't they? Thiem didn't have to play Monfils. I agree with you, tennis rules. I think Thiem is going to win it, and it might be this year's French Open. We just got a comment that Thiem's going to win a Grand Slam sooner or later. I think it might be this year's French Open. But for the Fed fans, remember, Federer's coming down the pike on clay, my friends. He's going to be dancing on the red dirt for us, and that's exciting. And since he hasn't been on the red dirt for a while, I think knowing Federer's biography, knowing what fires him up, what inspires him, I know that novelty inspires him. Fresh new circumstances inspire him. And the red dirt in the clay season will present the occasion to inspire Federer to greatness. And he may do some very great things on the clay this season. But listen, we still have more sunshine to go, folks. I want your comments. I want your views on how Dominic Thiem was able to trim, as it were, the great Roger Federer, to stop Federer from winning his 28th Masters 1000 title, and to take. Thiem has taken his first 1000 title. Listen, it was a tremendous and very inspiring job by Thiem. It was a lot of muscular tennis from him. It was a lot of very offensive, attacking tennis. He had to defend, don't get me wrong, but he didn't have to defend against serious firepower. You know, those accelerating neo backhands that we've seen from Federer. No, he didn't have. He had to defend against like some beautifully executed drop shots. Federer needed the day off just to compete. Roger just could have shortened his stretch precision shots. I'm seeing a comment. Yeah, well, they both had some days off. Again, Thiem had a bit of luck. He didn't have to face Monfils, and Monfils is not suffering fools gladly these days, folks. Monfils has been on fire. Well, you play that style of tennis, I suppose, and you eventually get an injury. Well, Nadal was on fire too, purportedly, until Khachanov, the towering Russian who has a great and bright future in the game, until Khachanov took Nadal to the two tiebreakers. Nadal took care of Khachanov in straight sets, but it was two tiebreakers, and Nadal was overstretched a little bit there, ended up with an injury, and couldn't compete in the semifinal against the Federer match that we all were so very much looking forward to. Well, Roger got a day off, and he should have been primed and ready. And he was in the first set, folks. But again, I think the artillery, just the acceleration that Thiem is able to generate. Thiem is an all-court player, folks. He is sometimes pigeonholed as a clay court specialist, and his game does, I think, does adapt well to the clay conditions. But here, on a relatively slow court, and let me know if you've heard anything different about the Indian Wells courts this year, it's known to be one of the slower clay court 1000 tournaments in terms of the court surfaces. Well, that benefits team, and that helped him. But mainly what was impressive to me with respect to Thiem's play today was the attacking, offensive element of it. And Federer just got confused. He got discombobulated, as it were, when the shots are coming back so quickly with so much precision. And Thiem really, there's going to be some highlights from this match, and I think we're going to have some great highlights from off Federer's racket. We're going to have some great highlights off of Thiem's racket. They're showing an aerial shot of the desert. Dominic Thiem, ladies and gentlemen, King of the Desert in 2019. Congratulations to Thiem. I think, again, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but my view of it is that Federer just didn't have the defense. Leach, great comment. We do like Thiem. We do like Thiem. Thank you for your comment, Leach. Thiem is in some respects a torchbearer. I mean, I have said before that in a way, Thiem is Fedal, because he brings elements of the Nadal game. The very muscular, strength-based play with the power. Yeah, well, that's the thing, tennis rules. He's kind of carrying two torches, isn't he? But one of his torches, thankfully, is the Federer torch, is the one-handed backhand style of play, the one-handed backhand paradigm of nuance and touch and variety and beauty and poetry. Well, Thiem doesn't bring so much of the poetry and the nuance. Roger Federer was bringing a lot of that today. But I agree with you, Noah. Federer was weak from the ground when he was in the back of the court, and Thiem was driving Federer back. Of course, Federer likes to kind of play a little closer to the baseline. In fact, a little into the back court a little bit rather than behind the baselines. Like to get the shots early, but Thiem was landing so many shots into the corners, many of which were coming very low over the net, which prevented Federer from calculating what to do in enough time, and Thiem was just taking time away from Federer. Well, back to the original point, Thiem bears two torches in a way, and he has the Federer torch in one hand. I would say his Federer torch burns a little more brightly than his Nadal torch, but he does have that Nadal component. That's one of the things I love about him. Now, a lot of you have accused me of favoring Federer over Nadal. No, I love Nadal. And I love the fact that Dominic Thiem in one body seems to put together the great aspects of Nadal's game as well as some of the great aspects of Federer's game. Thiem has a monumental serve, for example, in a way that Nadal can't really lay claim to a serve like that. Nadal's serve is effective, don't get me wrong, but Thiem has a much more effective serve. Some of these matches early in the week, I will say, with Thiem, I think the Thiem Karlovic in particular, but there was evidence that Thiem was just in form. Thiem was just in form this week, and a couple of those matches, he had such low, unforced errors. And again, just hitting winners from the back of the court with such acceleration. Something on the order of 95 miles an hour coming off Dominic Thiem's forehand today. Again, from the back of the court, oftentimes very high bouncing balls. It's astonishing that he can get a piece of some of these balls that Federer was putting back at him. But again, I just don't think Federer was able to make Thiem feel attacked, to take the time away from Thiem. I feel like it was really defensive play from Federer today. There was some offensive dimensions to his game in the form of drop shots, in the form of certain approaches that were well judged and well timed. There was too much, though, from Federer in the second and third sets in the way of ill-timed drop shots, imprudent approaches, and Federer, it seemed, did get a little tired in the third set. Now, let me go back to another point I was making in the pre-match show that I did earlier. By the way, I was going live from Starbucks, so there was maybe a couple problems with hearing me, but go back and listen to that too, because I make some points. But to elaborate, one of my main points was that Federer's success or failure oftentimes boils down to what goes on under the waist and below. Now, Mirka can take care of a certain element below the waist. And to my view, in my philosophy, while we're on that topic, I hope there's not too much going on in that area of the waist, because you need to kind of keep your mojo. I often wonder what these players do during these big tournaments. Do they have sexual relations with their wives? It's an interesting question. I don't want to get sort of X-rated here, but it's actually a physiological question. I would predict that they probably don't, but they need to keep their mojo up. And when I'm talking about Federer under the waist, I'm talking about his knees, I'm talking about his legs, I'm talking about his feet. And the recent data suggest that Federer, in the recent past, has suffered some disappointments precisely because his footwork has misfired and he's not as quick with his footwork. So Federer actually paid heed to this data that came out, and it was a few months ago. It was real solid data that indicated that Federer's footwork was just not working toward, say from Halle forward last year, and compared to his previous years. And so there was I think a very, very compelling point made, and I think Federer's people got a hold of this data. And one of the reasons he did so well in this tournament, one of the reasons he performed so well in Dubai, was because I think Paganini, who, for those of you who don't know, is Federer's trainer, I think Paganini took Federer out, started training him along those specific lines with those specific objectives of tightening up the footwork. And that's what Federer brought to Dubai. That's what Federer brought to Indian Wells. Until the third set, I think, and he just couldn't carry it through. I had a comment that Thiem has a better backhand. Well, than Federer, I presume. Well, I'm hard-pressed to disagree with you on the basis of today's tournament. It was quite an exhibition off the Thiem backhand wing. Now, Thiem really thrives when he's hitting those accelerating topspin backhands. His slice has improved, and it's getting better. And one of the beautiful things about Thiem's game that I will say from today's match is he hit a few very beautiful low over the net slice backhands that made it very hard for Roger Federer, who a few times in the second and third sets came up to the net at unfortunate, inappropriate times. But I do think that Thiem, consistent with the comment that was just made, I think that Thiem's backhand was a bit superior to the Federer backhand today. Listen, when I first started watching this match in the first set, I said to myself, Federer is striking the ball so well. And by the evidence of the first set, I had to infer that Thiem was going to disappoint yet again in another high-intensity, high-stakes situation, because he has done that in the past. Well, he had a difficult first set, but then the tables completely turned. Federer's first serve fell off in the second set. It was a big part of why he dropped the second set. His first serve fell off. There was a lot of seconds coming into Thiem, and Thiem began to tee off in an astonishingly beautiful way, an effective way, in response to the Federer kick serves. Now, the kick serves, again, with Thiem, One of the reasons he can do a job on Federer is Thiem is actually real good with those high bouncing balls. And the kick serves come in, and Federer didn't really take that into account. Yes, Basilashvili, Leach, great comment. He has shown some real promise. So we're going to be watching Basilashvili, and I like him. I like Basilashvili. Cool guy, brings a nice kind of approach to the court, and he just gets down to business, doesn't he? Well, Thiem, however, today, the key was that he began to attack. He attacked Rogers' second serve, and he was just in the attacking mode. There was too much attacking, and he was landing the shots. He was kissing the lines. Now, in previous high-stakes scenarios, Thiem has failed to kiss the lines. Of course, the big example is last year's French Open when he was slaughtered by Nadal. Well, some of you might say, well, Nadal was just too good. It wasn't Thiem. No, Thiem didn't play so well in that match. Thiem did not play very well in that French Open final. I'm just so glad for Thiem. Again, this, for the Fed fans, of course, I am sort of a Fed fan. Apologize to you folks out there who want me to be completely objective. I'm one part objective, but another part of me loves Roger Federer, loves the style that he has produced and has the paradigm of play, the stylistic paradigm of play that he has kept alive, that began with Laver, and that dates back really to the beginning of tennis. It's a historical issue with Federer. And that was my point last year when we were talking about the clay season, and people were getting on me a little for criticizing Nadal. And not that I was criticizing Nadal, I just wanted a contest against Nadal during clay. And I called him in one of my videos, or one of my thumbnails, I had a picture of Nadal that said, "The Dictator," which I thought was such a great way to put it, because in a way that kind of implies, I guess I'm patting myself on the back for my own headline, but it implies a political dictator on the one hand, and the people that don't like me, criticizing Nadal or being more pro-Federer, they were getting on me for that particular post. I can't believe you called Nadal the dictator. Well, there's another sense of that, in the sense that he dictates play, and that's why he wins. He is the dictator, and I hold to that. And that's not a criticism. It's a compliment. The Dictator. Now, there was a bit of a pun in that video. Go back and check that video out. We got a lot of fun videos from last year. What I've been noticing is that folks are going back and watching those videos, and I appreciate that so much. We have so much fun. Nadal is the exterminator. Adam West says Djokovic to win the French. Well, listen, folks, we can talk about a few of these other loose ends toward the end of this live stream. I think Djokovic has a good chance, of course, to win the French. He's committed to this idea of cleaning up and doing this true Grand Slam, 4 Grand Slams in a row, although he does really need the calendar slam. I like the calendar slam better. But why is the calendar slam more challenging? Question for you guys. Trivia question. Why is the calendar slam more challenging than a non-calendar year slam, which is all that Djokovic can do at this point? Why is it? It's because the French Open and Wimbledon are so close together, right? The way that Djokovic is intending to do it now, he's got Wimbledon, the U.S., the Australian, and now he'll do the French. If he gets the French, he'll never have to deal with that close interim period, the proximity of the French to Wimbledon, which is a big disadvantage, to be honest. But we'll see what happens. Heck, I wouldn't put it past the Serbinator to win the French Open and Wimbledon. We'll see what happens. He could win a calendar year slam, but the upshot with respect to Djokovic is he is basically the dominant Grand Slam. If nothing else, the dominant Grand Slam player right now. It's interesting. I know he struck out early at Indian Wells. And I'm not sure he cares so much. I think he really has his eye. I mean, he's already ahead of Federer and very close to Nadal in the Masters 1000 tally. He has 32 Masters 1000 titles. I think Djokovic is pretty confident that he's going to surpass Nadal with the Masters 1000 titles. And I think that actually is a pretty safe prediction. But what really concerns Djokovic are the Grand Slam wins, and he knows how to perform in that best-of-5 context. Well, we've got Miami coming up, folks. There's another chance for Federer to shine. He looked very solid this week. He'll have to regroup, figure out what he did wrong here. But again, I believe that it was really the absence of a truly offensive game from Federer's point of view, and I'm talking about an offensive game from the ground. Of course, Federer has an offensive game in connection with the serves and the 1-2 punches and backing up the first serves. Of course, he has that kind of offensive game, but it's with respect to the rallies. Can he produce the intensity, the acceleration during rallies out of nowhere? Shock and awe. Federer's got to rekindle the shock and awe that we saw him produce, for example, in the Australian Open of 2017. He needs a little bit of that shock and awe. Dominic Thiem was not being shocked and awed enough, and unhappily for Federer, Federer was shocked a few times, awed a few times. Dominic Thiem was the shock and awe specialist today in the desert at Indian Wells. For those of you tuning in, Dominic Thiem has won his first Masters 1000 title. We congratulate Thiem. We love Thiem here at Tennis Talk Daily. He's been one of the players I've been talking about for a long time. My proposition with respect to Thiem has pretty much always been the same, which is that when he's on, he's pretty much unbeatable. Let me remind you, Dominic Thiem now holds a winning record against Roger Federer. Yes, he leads in the head-to-head against Roger Federer 3-2. He has beaten Federer on grass. He has beaten Federer on the red dirt. He has beaten Federer on the hards. Thank you, Stuart. Thiem is a real fan of Federer, you mean? I think so. You think Adam West mentions that Federer's nerves maybe got to him? I'm not sure about that. It's possible. I think he just got fatigued. He's been doing straight set victories all week. There wasn't even a tiebreaker all week. He didn't play a tiebreaker for the whole tournament. And Thiem has that youthful physiological advantage. I mean, isn't that it, folks? I mean, because Thiem, of course, played a pretty long semifinal against Raonic. That went to 3 sets, right? Miami update. Del Potro out. Nadal, Kohlschreiber. All of those people are out? Good Lord. I didn't know Nadal was out of not Miami. Clarify if I was wrong about that. I'm going to come on a little later this week. I'm going to do some coverage of Miami, folks, for those of you, to the extent you've missed me. I have absolutely missed you. I've been very busy. I'm broadcasting from my office right now. But yes, well, that makes the field in Miami a little different. I will come back and do an analysis of the Miami draw. But Federer's got more chances here. He's got more chances here. Listen, Djokovic wants blood. By the way, blood was shed on the court today. This is a contact sport, folks. Blood was shed on the court today. Dominic Thiem fell down, scraped his elbow, but I think scrape is actually an understatement. I mean, there was blood pouring out of his elbow. It was a really bad fall. So blood was shed. He did get it wrapped up, and that was in the 3rd set, and he was able to come back and, again, win the match. But, man, it's a tough game. These guys played their hearts out. I want to take a moment just to thank the gratitude I have for Federer, for him to come out at 37, to stick with it, to stay committed to winning. He's going to win more, but we have to celebrate for Dominic Thiem as well, because he's shown himself to be a very formidable force on this tour. And now, let me repeat, and I don't mean to disillusion the Fed fans, but he's now beaten Federer on all three surfaces and has a winning record against the great Roger Federer. I think there's only two other people that have a winning record against Federer. Thiem has a bright future, folks, and it could be Thiem's time. Some folks were mentioning, by folks there I mean commentators, some commentators were saying after the Australian Open loss by Federer to Tsitsipas that it was a changing of the guard to some degree. Well, I don't think that's true. I don't think that it was quite a changing of the guard, and changing of the guards don't take place in single matches usually. But it's possible that the Thiem Federer final at Indian Wells in 2019 will go down in history as, if not a match that itself constitutes a changing of the guard, then as one of the matches that marked real turning points in the history of the game. Physiology will ultimately determine the fate of Roger Federer, folks. He cannot go on winning forever. Not with folks like Djokovic and Thiem and Nadal and Zverev and Khachanov and Tsitsipas and so many others that are so hungry for these titles, so hungry for Grand Slam titles, and so hungry in particular to usurp the big three. To usurp the big three, well, Djokovic has no intention of being usurped, that's for sure. He's the one to beat at the Grand Slams. Yes, Noah, Federer's snap in the forehand was lacking today. I have to agree with you. But there were a number of things lacking in Federer's game today. But again, I think, this is my personal view, it comes down to, one, the fatigue of Federer in the third set, which is a product to some degree of age. But to further specify, I think it comes down to the footwork. It virtually always comes down to the footwork. Now, I'm gonna do it. There's another element, another hidden element of Federer's game that I want to talk about in another episode, and that has to do with the grip. His grip on the racket. Thiem, Khachanov, Tsitsipas, Zverev, Felix, all these dudes will be coming hard. Yes, sir. Thank you. Amen. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's such a good thing that we've got Thiem and Tsitsipas in. And Tsitsipas is a full-fledged torchbearer. There's no reservation on that. He's not carrying the torch of Nadal in really any way. Now, Thiem, as we said before, is kind of a double torchbearer, but his Federer torch burns more brightly. So for the Federer fans, it's not quite a loss today. It's not a loss. We want Thiem, we want the likes of Thiem and Tsitsipas to be performing and to be winning titles. We want Federer to surrender, well, not to surrender, but when and if Federer goes, when and if Federer declines, we want great one-handers to succeed him. Yes, we do, folks. And because we want that variety in the game, we don't want to do away and dispose of the two-handers. We want two-handers too. But we need the historically based style of play that has its roots so far back in the history of tennis, and that is the aesthetically more pleasing way, and just adds the variety to the game. So that's what we want. Thiem brings that, and so, you know what, for the Federer fans, there's reason to celebrate. But Djokovic will be back. Miami is up for grabs. All bets are off. But consider this. Consider this possibility. Thiem wins in Miami and picks up the Sunshine Double. Now that would be a very promising back-to-back win for Dominic Thiem. We'll see if he can do it. He seems to be on a roll. He seems to be finding a lot of rhythm. And mainly, my main comment about Thiem is that I'm just astonished by the low number of unforced errors that he's committing in these matches. And there was a match, I think it was the Karlovic match, where the unforced errors, like 2 or 3 unforced errors the whole match. And I was thinking to myself, good God, if he can maintain that, if he can sustain that. Tennis Rules predicts a 3rd round loss for Thiem in Miami. I appreciate your prediction. I appreciate the specificity of your prediction. It certainly could happen. He's going to be pretty satisfied if he, of course, Thiem's already a millionaire, but he's got another million, actually in excess of $1 million to put into his bank account or his stock account today. But Thiem has some promise going into 2019. He had a slow start, and he had some really disappointing losses this year. But, all the players lose, folks. That's another. Terry, thank you for your comment, and I completely agree. He was a better player, and it wasn't the kind of better player that Del Potro was at Indian Wells last year. He was a mark above Federer, and the dimension along which Thiem edged Federer was the dimension of offensive, attacking, accelerating, shock and awe play that really no one but Thiem can execute. In a way, he's kind of, maybe Nadal. He brings that Nadal component. Again, let me repeat, Thiem is Fadal. He is Fadal. He brings together really some of the best components of both Nadal and Federer into one body. Is he finding form? Is he the future dominant player in the game? Yes, Thiem is like Stan. True, except for the fact that Thiem is potentially breaking through at a much younger age than Stan. And yes, you're right, Tennis Rules. The older guys, they're starting to have a more difficult time keeping up with the young guys. And that's what the other issue with this match was today from Federer's perspective. It was a 3-set marathon. In the context of the best of 3, it was basically a marathon. And Federer lost steam. It needed to be a straight set win for the 37-year-old, folks. And really, when Thiem picked up the second set, the odds for Federer went way down in my book. I wasn't tweeting the match, but when Thiem picked up that second set, it did seem a little more dismal, so to speak, with respect to Federer's prospects. Federer, he really did hang in there, and he played great tennis throughout the match, but he was just overdone. He was out-rallied by Thiem and out-hit. He just couldn't muster the kind of defensive capabilities that, for example, maybe a Djokovic could bring. I was impressed with what Federer was doing in terms of the defensive play because Thiem was landing these cross-court backhands and forehands right into the corners, requiring Federer, who was already, kind of inching up on the court like he likes to do, it required Federer to come up with kind of these backhanding where he picks balls out of the corner. Well, he could do that well as a purely defensive matter, but the picks out of the corner off the backhand side in particular often don't produce shots that are going to be intimidating to the player. They often, in fact, produce shots that the player on the other side of the court can tee off on. Well, listen, any opportunity that Thiem had today, any opportunity that Federer gave Thiem today, any opportunity to tee off and to wind up and to deliver one of those walloping, accelerating shots, whether it's down the line or cross court, Federer was doing it too much. He was too many short balls. And again, since Thiem was constantly on the offensive, Federer oftentimes could only hit. The best he could do was to get a short ball back, which then gives Thiem the time to kind of tee off. And again, hit these shots that in a way only Thiem can execute. I've seen Tsitsipas, do this too. I mean, it kind of may be something that the younger players do better than the older people, which is just out of the blue, in a way, execute that kind of shock and awe strategy. Listen, folks, Thiem deserves a lot of credit and a lot of praise today. I've been singing his praises for a long time now. I'm a big fan of Dominic Thiem. Congratulations, Dominic, Dommy, as I like to call him. You deserve it. You've been hanging in there. You've been a permanent part of the top 10 for so long. In fact, there's something of a record he holds, not for being in the top 10, but in terms of the recent records, like the person who's been in the top 10 for, I think he's been in the top 10 longer in terms of a recent time period than some of the other periods, than some of the other players. But yeah, Dommy, that's what I call him. He is a fantastic player, and he has provided evidence. In advance of today's match, we had plenty of evidence that Dominic Thiem would be lifting a Masters 1000 trophy eventually. We had plenty of evidence that Dominic Thiem, and now we have more evidence, that Dominic Thiem is going to be lifting a Grand Slam trophy, and he will be. He certainly will. But if and when Nadal retires, Thiem will almost certainly win a French Open, but I think he could possibly do it this year. Listen, if Thiem can bring the same caliber of game to Nadal as he did to Federer today at Roland Garros, I think Thiem could lift the trophy. But I think we're getting a little too far ahead of ourselves. We're not quite on the red dirt yet, folks. And Novak Djokovic is going to have a lot to say about Thiem's potential path into, who knows, another trophy at Miami. Djokovic is going to be raring to go, chomping at the bit. I think Federer did a valiant job today, but it was just too much fatigue in the third set. And again, when the footwork starts to fail, it's a combination. The two secret elements of Federer's game are the gripping, and I'm going to do a separate episode about the gripping, which is very hard to understand. It's a very complex component of Federer's game because he's constantly changing the grips, and he likes to wait until the last moment to decide what grip to use on the racket. We'll talk about that some other time, but the element today that I think was lacking, and really it's the key element that kind of dictates whether Federer succeeds in other areas, is the footwork. It's what goes on below the waist. It's his legs, his ankles, his feet, how he's getting around the court, how he's running around shots. And I must admit, by the third set, and we're coming on to 50 minutes right now, we'll probably get close to an hour, but I do have to sign off here pretty soon. But I have to admit that in this match, Thiem was outdoing Federer with the footwork too. In particular, the way he was running around some of these shots that were coming at his body so as to tee off on forehands that, again, were coming at Federer into the corners at in excess of 90 miles an hour. Thiem's footwork was superior to the great Federer's. Maybe not in the first set, but Federer kind of waned in terms of the agility and deftness of his footwork over the course of the match. And Thiem, again, go back and watch that match. Thiem's footwork was very critical. It is such a key component to a lot of players' games. We don't talk about it a lot, but to Federer's game in particular, the reason, I could almost say this, the reason why Federer has won so many tournaments, the reason why he has all these records, the reason why he is the greatest player of all time, if you had to boil it down to one component of his game, it's the footwork. It's not his backhand. He can hit backhands any day of the week, folks. He can hit great forehands any day of the week. Yes, he was sort of lacking in the snap. That's right. He was lacking with kind of the acceleration, the pace of his shots. He was striking the ball well. He did play well in the first couple of sets, and Thiem kind of stole the second set from him. But once it got into a third set, folks, it was sort of all over but the shouting. Now, I was still on the edge of my seat, and Federer did make some great efforts in the third set, but the general feeling of the match at that point was that this young gun, who's relatively young compared to Federer, I think he's 12 years younger than Federer, which in tennis years is pretty much a lifetime. The young gun was just outdoing the elderly statesman of the game. And a lot of that did have to do with the footwork. And the footwork, again, you can explain that acceleration in the ground strokes with reference to the footwork. You can explain a lot of things in Thiem's game with respect to the footwork too, but with respect to Federer's game and explaining why he has given us a few disappointments, explaining why there has been a general decline in Federer's play relative to, say, 2018 Australian Open. There's been a decline in Federer's game, and I think the key factor that explains the decline is the footwork, and that in turn relates to the age. He's getting older. He's doing a great job. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I want to thank Roger Federer for not only showing us, not only having the courage to show us his rise, which involved a lot of risk of failure. Every time he goes out in the court, he risks public embarrassment. They all do. And I have so much gratitude for these players because I love watching them so much. But they risk public embarrassment every time they come out. But particularly with Federer, he's been in so many high-stakes situations. But he's shown us his rise. He's shown us his domination. And now he will show us his decline. And you know what? I want to see it. I don't want to see it as a decline. I just want to see him play. And he's getting a little older. He loves playing the game. One thing he proved this week is that he loves the game. He loved playing this week, folks. It was a victory for Federer in that sense. He loved playing. He loved playing at Dubai. He loved playing at Indian Wells. He did not love playing against Dominic Thiem in this second and third set of the final at the 2019 Indian Wells Masters 1000. He did not enjoy that very much. Listen, if you had to just distill this down to the essence, folks, Thiem was the boss. That's right. Thiem was bossing Federer around that court. And really, if you look back at that match, Federer doesn't do a lot of, he's not a bossy player. He doesn't win matches by bossing people around often. Now with the serve, he's got some bossy components to the serve, I'll give you that. But that's okay. So he brought his own approach. But I think the problem for Federer is he needed to at least he needed to counter with some bossing around of himself, or he needed to defend in such an impeccable way, as well as kind of generating the capacity to sort of counterattack. I mean, that's what Federer wasn't able to do today. He wasn't able to counter, because that's what he does. Generally, in the absence of a serving scenario where he's dominating with a 1-2 punch or something like that, in the absence of that, Federer is a feel game. He wants to feel where the opponent is going, and he's kind of reacting in a very deliberate and thinking way. He thinks very quickly, and so he reacts. He responds to whatever shot is coming at him. But one of the ways that he does respond to these attacks, and he's had attackers come at him before. Heck, Nadal will attack you right to the bone, won't he? Federer knows how to deal with an attacking player, but today he was just not able to find the time to generate the counterattacks in response to the Thiem basically onslaught of devastating ground strokes from the baseline, from behind the baseline, on coming off of very high bouncing balls. It's amazing what he can do with that one-hander. A lot of people criticize the one-hander because the theory goes that it's harder to hit high balls. Well, Dominic Thiem is a counterexample to that, kind of disproves that proposition because he has no problem with the high balls. And in fact, he seems to get a better piece of the balls when they're bouncing high over on the backhand wing. Well, folks, I've been going on for a while, and I don't want to go on forever. I've got to get going, but it was a great match. I hope all of you are doing well. Give me your comments. I want to know your views on this, but I am generally, I'm happy after this match. It's a bit disappointing from the perspective of the Fed fans who wanted Fed to, again, lift his 28th Masters 1000 title. It almost seemed like a foregone conclusion that he would, but it wasn't a foregone conclusion. Again, go back to the preview that I did from Starbucks. It was a live stream from Starbucks earlier in the day today, and again, I stated this was not a foregone conclusion and that Thiem has the capacity to put Federer away and, in fact, to kind of steamroll him. And that's kind of what happened today, I think. Federer got steamrolled, and he just didn't have enough defensive, kind of counterattacking gas, as it were. He kind of ran out of gas, I think, at the end of the match, and that relates, I believe, to his age. He's mortal. He's mortal, folks. He is not a machine, and he will decline. He will lose. Dominic Thiem will lose. They all lose. But today, it was Thiem's day. It's Thiem's time, and it could be very well Thiem's year. Congratulations to Thiem. Congratulations to the great Roger Federer for getting to the final at Indian Wells, for playing some fantastic tennis this week, for demonstrating to himself and to us, again, that he loves this game and that he's not going away anytime soon. He's not, folks. He's going to be with us, and I'm going to be talking about Roger Federer for a long time, about his actual game, his actual matches in high-stakes tournaments. Well, we're coming up on an hour. It's been a fantastic stream. I love you guys. Tune in. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Remember to hit the notification bell so you get notifications when I'm doing live streams. We're going to do more coverage of Miami, I promise, and we're going to have history in the making in Miami, and we'll just have to keep an eye on Dominic Thiem, a rising star to be sure. It was a great match today. It was a hard-fought match. It was not a clean slam dunk win for Dominic Thiem. Roger Federer put up a great fight, a very impressive fight, and he just ran out of gas at the end. That had an impact on his footwork, and Thiem was full of gas at the end. He was really showed no signs. And remember, Thiem went down and was shedding blood. Blood was shed in this final, folks. A lot of it. It wasn't a small. It wasn't like a scrape on his elbow. There was a gash on Thiem's elbow. He shed blood. He's a warrior. And that impresses me. I love it. I love the fact that he's a young gun. He's got all that energy. And I hope this is a sign of things to come for Dominic Thiem. Well, I'm going to sign off. I hope everyone's doing wonderfully. I will be back at you very soon. Subscribe to the channel. Give me your comments. I want to know all your comments. If I don't respond with a note, it doesn't mean I'm not reviewing them. I'm absolutely reviewing them, and I very well could mention them in subsequent episodes. So that's it for me today. Best wishes to you all. Have a happy week. I'll be back at you probably sometime next week, but more likely maybe next weekend. We'll talk about the Miami draw. Best wishes to you all.